Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Some of you have reached out for ideas on how to support learning at home. So I've put together a presentation and I'm just going to talk through it. Hopefully this will be a one-hit wonder and I won't have to do lots of retakes. So forgive me if I make some mistakes, but I really hope this will help you. And before I start, let's just acknowledge that being at home and having to do remote learning is not anybody's first choice. We accept that this is a response to the pandemic, but we would all much rather the children were able to come to school every day, full time. And I know it's hard when you're at home, especially if you've got other commitments, whether you've got more than one child needing your time and support and attention, whether it's anxieties about the pandemic and how this is ever going to end. It might be that you are working full time and that is a massive stress on you. And so I just want to recognise that you've all got different stresses, different dynamics in your house, different commitments and different feelings of anxiety, lockdown, fatigue, stress about your jobs, worrying about your children. There's a lot going on for all of you and we do recognise that. And let's just acknowledge that school is a very special place and you can't recreate that at home. Home is a very special place too. It's very different. And just to reassure you all that for us as teachers, home is different. So when I put this together, I wouldn't want you to think that in the Ezard household, learning goes smoothly. My children are luckily older. They don't need so much of my support in terms of helping them support them through their learning. But it's hard. And I wouldn't want you to think that when my children were younger, they loved doing learning with me at home. They really didn't. They, particularly my older one, really resisted doing learning with me, and so I really empathise with you. And I have tried to think about how it would have been for me if my children were in reception and year 2. So when I first came to Windlesham, that's how old my children were. My youngest was in reception, my eldest was in year 2, and I do remember those days. And learning at home wasn't easy. So I don't want you to think I have all the answers. This might help. I hope it helps at least make you feel better and gives you something to try at home. But I wouldn't want you to think I'm in any way giving myself as an example of perfect learning at home, because that really doesn't happen. Okay, so it's hard for all of us, and teachers find it hard at home too, because it's just not the same. The dynamics are very different, and you feel differently about your pupils when you're related to them. I'm probably not the most patient person doing remote learning at home. Okay, so I'm going to leave these slides up and I'm not going to read them to you, but I'm going to talk around them. So these are my prompts to talk through the things. So for children of our age, for children aged 4 to 7, a routine is really important. So they know what to expect of your day, what's going to happen. We have that firmly established in school. So if you can have a pattern of the day, even if it's not strict timings, that their children know that what's going to happen after breakfast, what's going to happen before lunch, what's going to happen after lunch. Now and next is a really powerful thing to try with the children. I always used it with mine, so I would be saying to my son, now we're going to do your writing, and next you can choose a programme to watch on CBeebies, for example, or now we're going to do your reading, and next it's tea time. So that it's a short activity, there's an end to it. I'm not going to be sat at this table struggling with my writing forever and ever, and when we're finished I can go and watch the Octonauts. That's really powerful for both of you. Now, my son was a reluctant writer. I myself was a reluctant writer as a child, and it is tough. I'll come to writing later on, but writing is often the one that's hardest to do at home. I would always start with something that they enjoy doing. So if your child really likes the games on Phonics Play, for example, use that to start the day. That's a positive, that you're going to warm up to learning, get them enjoying themselves, and then make the most of that good feeling they're having by introducing the next task. Okay, so it might be now we're going to play Phonics Play, and next we're going to do the writing that Mrs. Andrew would like you to do. I'd always say, if you complete the one piece of learning that the teacher wants to see, if you complete that early on in your day, you're going to feel so much better. The pressure is then off. Everything else is a bonus. You know you've submitted that, taken a picture, sent it to the teacher, and then the rest of the day, any other learning is a bonus. And if you haven't tried that already, I would say try it. I know that's the way I would go if my children were year 2 and reception again. Our children really do need someone to support them as they do their learning. In class, we would have our teaching slides, we would have the children on the carpet, we would do lots and lots of talk before we would send them off to their tables to do their writing. There'd always be a teacher working with one group, the teaching assistant working with another. That would mean there's a table or two working on their own, but not for a very long time. And whatever's left on the board would help them get through it. So we'd set a task that they could do on their own. And then when they came back, we'd be talking about the learning they were doing. It might be that we'd be saying, like, red table, you're working on your own. And at the end of the lesson, I'm going to choose somebody's writing to read. So there's a reason for writing, and I need to get it done because Mrs. Ezards might read my writing. At the end of the lesson, Mrs. Ezards is going to pick mine to share with the class. So it better be good. So when you're learning at home, there will be tasks that your child can watch the PowerPoint, they can learn to press the buttons and click themselves through it. But that's structured for a reason, and they do need to talk through that we're asking questions at school, we would be asking questions, they'd talk about it on the carpet, share some ideas, so they really do need that talking time. Active and practical things. If writing is a struggle, keep it in short bursts, and then the talking is really important. Don't underestimate the power of talk in an infant classroom, because that's when the children are sharing ideas, thinking about things quite deeply, and it doesn't always have to be written down. So if you've really talked around the subject and it's been really interesting to talk around the subject, that's when key learning happens. Take a break. The children will concentrate in reception 15 minutes. Is good concentration at one task. If they're really into it, don't stop them, keep it going. But if they really are struggling, take a break, do it for 10 minutes, stop. And then say, right, what are we going to do to finish this learning? Let's write one more sentence before we send it to Mrs. Strickland or Miss Powell, Miss Burton, Mrs. Andrew. Frequent breaks. And really praise them if they're trying hard. And I know from personal experience that can be really hard when your child is struggling. And it is difficult, but really try and say, okay, I want you to, well done, let's stop there. And then go and do something completely different. That could be playing a game, that could be going for a walk, but all of those things, small chunks. Okay, so writing. In class, as I've said, we would have talk partners, and we often use a sentence starter. So it might be we give the children the beginning of a sentence. Kipper felt sad because. They've got to finish the end of the sentence. So we'd practice that on the carpet. How are you going to finish that sentence? So they're saying it and sharing ideas, because everyone will have their own idea. It's okay. if the children use your ideas to do their writing, because we just want them to be writing, and if they think your reason for Kipper being sad was a really good one and they want to write that, that's okay. Really be specific if you're questioning them. Why do you think Kipper was sad? Let's look at the picture. What had happened in the story? And really help them to answer your questions. If you've written a sentence, it's okay to leave it up there. We might leave the sentence up there on the board so the children remember that it starts with a capital letter and it ends with a full stop and we've got finger spaces. But I might say to the children, right, I'm going to leave my sentence that we've practiced together on the board. You are going to write your own. So you're not going to copy my sentence, but you could use the beginning of it. Kipper was sad because. Because is a tricky word to write, so I'll leave that on the board for you, but I want you to write your own sentence. I don't want you to copy mine. Word banks are always helpful because when you're writing, there's a lot going on. You've got to remember the order of the words, there's the spelling, there's the handwriting and the word formation. You've then got to remember things like finger spaces. Spellings is really difficult, so if you can write words that they need down, great. And in the front of their books they've got the common exception words if they're year 1 and year 2 and their home learning books, so they're there for them. I'll also make sure we put a word bank on the website for you to use. It's straight from Twinkle, but words like the, which you have to just know, you can't sound them out. That takes the pressure off. If they're writing about Bessie Coleman, give them that word, Bessie Coleman, give that name, because it's not one that we would normally be writing, and it can be hard. That takes the stress out of the writing if the key spellings that they need are in front of them. Common exception words I've just talked about, and in the English slides that are being used in year 1 and year 2, there's some really lovely new ideas about spellings. So we've been looking at the words what this week, and I can't remember the other one, but there were some really lovely ideas of how to look at that word what, which to us as a grown-up, we don't remember learning how to write it, we just know it. But there's some really nice ideas in those PowerPoints about looking at those words and using Play-Doh to make the word and really look at the shape of the word. The other thing about reading is, writing is, it is hard. And I know that many of you will be worried about the writing, and certainly in September we noticed that writing was the thing that the children found hardest. Keep going with it. You're doing absolutely the best you can, and when schools do reopen, we'll keep going. We'll take stock of where the children are, and we'll just keep going with the format we've got and just get them writing more, building up their stamina and their confidence. So if you can keep the writing going at home, brilliant. Now I say this as the mother of a very reluctant writer, and that's been my son's story from the word go. So I do empathise with you how we would do our writing when he was at infant level. Definitely small chunks, lots and lots of praise, and emphasising that it would get better as long as we kept practising. And that was very hard for my son to see, because writing was such an effort, physically difficult, and just all of those things like trying to keep the writing on the line, finger spaces, capital letters, full stops, spellings. Spellings were really hard for him. So I feel your pain if it's difficult for you. Just keep going, small chunks. If they write one sentence successfully, brilliant. Lots and lots of praise. When you send that in to the teacher, we will praise too. Because that makes a big difference. And I know for my son, I would always say to him, look, I haven't asked you to do this home learning, your teacher has. And it's not a choice because she is expecting it to be done. And let's just think, how disappointed she's going to be when I tell her, you wouldn't do it. You know, you're not upsetting me, you'll be upsetting her. What's that face going to look like when I say, sorry, Miss Bounds, he wouldn't do it? Now that normally did the trick for my son because he didn't mind disappointing his mum, but the idea of upsetting his teacher and letting her down was something he couldn't cope with. So try that tack, and if needs be, give us a call and we'll talk you through it, okay? But a little bit of writing, just keep going with it because it does get easier. But if you are a reluctant writer, and I was one myself, I remember feeling like it was really hard. It wasn't something I enjoyed. I knew I wasn't particularly good at it. My writing wasn't very neat. If I'm honest, I wasn't that motivated to get neater, with my mum nagging me. But I know when I got a teacher that I really liked and admired, I really wanted to please her with my writing. And then it all got easier. So it's if you're plodding through your writing, I sympathise, and you will get there. So tell yourself it's a marathon, not a race. Okay? All right, reading. So when we're reading with the children, it starts on the front cover. So here we have the book, The Strange Old House. And if I was reading at home, or if I was reading it with a child in school, I'd say, oh, this looks interesting. Let's have a look at the front cover before we open the book. The Strange Old House. Where do you think the children are? Why is it strange? What does the word strange mean? Let's have a look at their faces. How are they feeling? Are they feeling happy? Oh, they look a bit nervous, don't they? I wonder why they're nervous. Why are they peeking through the keyhole? All of those questions, and it gets your child ready for reading, because if you've highlighted the word strange, that's a tough one to read. It's getting us ready. We're anticipating that it might be something spooky, it might be something that they're nervous about, there might be a reason to be scared. It's an old house. All of those words will come up in the book, and that will get us ready. Okay? So then you can see on the page that the house is called Huntley Hall. Now, it's unlikely your child's read that word before. So if I was reading and I with my child and I knew my child was going to stumble on those words, I might say, this is the story about Huntley Hall. And then when they get to that bit in the book, that will help them to read. So if your child does find it hard, give them those really difficult words straight on, so that when they come to the word Huntley Hall, they'll recognise the capital H, and that will help them read. That gives them a little bit more confidence to read. They're worried about making a mistake. That just helps them. So give them difficult words. It's okay to do that. That was always a strategy that worked well for my children at home. So if there was a word on the page that I could see, particularly if it was in the picture somehow, I might say, oh, look, there's a picture of her, and say the word, so that when we did start to do the reading, my children would recognise that, oh, that's the word she just said. It builds in success as you go on, okay? If your child is reluctant, maybe you read a page and then they read a page, and you take it in turns. So you're giving your child some choice. They can choose to go first, or they can choose to go second. And they're still reading. They might not be reading the whole book, but you're getting reading done. And certainly if you're taking it in turns, words that you read on this page, it's likely they'll come across them in this page too. So you're just giving them some support without them really realising that's what you're doing. Talk about the meaning of unusual words like strange. I chose this book as well. Now, this is called Roller Coaster. The picture is there to help, so if you haven't been to a fun fair, you might recognise that that's a roller coaster. And then on this page, we come across the word carousel. So can you see that? Carousel. Now again, that's a really difficult word to read. So I might, as the child turns the page, and I might have quickly scanned and spotted the word carousel on the page, I might say, oh, look, do you know what, this is a carousel, do you know what happens on these? So you're giving them the word carousel so that when they get there, I know what that is, it's in the picture, we've talked about the word carousel, I can read it, okay? And make predictions, so whether I'm reading with a child here in school, if I was reading at home, I might put my hand on the page so that before we turn over, I'd say, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. What's the girl going to do? And it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. Some stories are easy to predict, and that's a great skill, because if you're predicting, if you're anticipating what's going to happen in the story, you know where you're going. It's like going down a familiar road, you know where you're going to need to turn. So you're helping them build in what they're expecting. It does help. After reading, ask them, tell me something that happened in the story. If it's a longer book, they might not want to recap the whole story, but just check, have they understood the story? Because if you are so busy decoding the words, so just physically reading those words, you might not be making sense of them. So another good thing to do is to reread the sentence. So if your child has had to sound out a lot of those words, reread it. Let them finish the sentence. So let them sound out those words. Sam got the pot. Sam got the pot, so that they are making sense of what's actually happening as well as just decoding the words. Okay, so build that up and then ask them something just so that they are having to remember something about the story, because retrieval, following the story, really important. Pause, prompt, praise. Try not to correct them when they're struggling straight away. Count to 5 in your head, and I know that's hard. Give them a prompt if they're finding it hard. Tell them the beginning of the word. If it's a real struggle, give them the whole word and just reassure them it's okay, that's a difficult one. The word is roller coaster. And give them lots of encouragement for trying hard. Now, Miss Burton and one of our governors have prepared a supporting reading at home document. I've printed it off, so I've got 2 pages on one piece of photocopying, so they'll be sent out. You don't have to print out, but there's some really good ideas, and amongst them is ideas of how not to say no when they're reading. So it's really difficult. You don't want to interrupt them when they're reading. You want to praise for them to be praise them for doing well, and then spotting mistakes that they make. So if they read, sometimes children go through a phase of guessing, so they see what the beginning of the word is and they'll insert a word. It might not make sense in the story, but they're guessing at it. It's okay to say, hang on a minute, let's look at that word again, have another go. You've got the beginning right, that's great, but it doesn't say that. Let's look at it. So you're just getting that accuracy without saying no that might put them off. So I really recommend this when it comes out. There's some really lovely ideas. Okay, but a little bit of reading each day would be amazing. There's the collection box outside at school, so that if you are passing, you could collect some reading books from school, or you can use the e-books from Oxford Owl. But those are some really lovely ideas. But if reading is hard, even if they're just reading for 5 minutes a day and you do 3 pages and you stop, that's great. I noticed that children generally towards the end of the book, their stamina might go and they might make more mistakes. So read half. You don't have to read the whole book in one go. And if they're really struggling, you read a page, I read a page, or you read a line, I'll read a line. And that will really help get them started. And even if that's all you do, it's redo. And if you swap round who takes the first turn, they will read the whole book eventually. But just do it for 10 minutes, and then if they're really into it, keep going. But if they're really struggling, stop. Okay. Give feedback. Lots of praise, lots of encouragement. We'll encourage you to mark your work as you go. We would do that if we were in school and we were working with a group. We would mark as we go, and we would say, "Oh, I'm not sure about that maths question. Look at number 3. You haven't put the right answer there. Have another look and talk it through." And then lots of encouragement, lots of praise, high fives, hugs, smiley faces, whatever works for your child. Send the learning by email to the teacher. Ask for help if you need it. So I know the teachers are giving specific support to some families, and that's fine. And I also know that some families are flying at the moment. Brilliant, great. But send it in and we will give feedback. And if there is something you're unsure of, ask, because your teacher will give you some really good advice specific to how they support your child at school, because they're all different. Different tactics work on different children. Okay. When it's not going well, we all have bad days, and we all have off days, and in school sometimes we have days where a child or a group of children just aren't particularly motivated, and other days when, you know, we might say to the children, "My goodness, what did you have for breakfast today? You're on fire, that's brilliant." So just accept, or try to accept, that there are going to be days that are harder. Take a break. And I know that's not great if the whole day becomes a break, but I know I would often take my children outside just to change the mood. So we would go for a walk, watch some TV, play a game, just to change the mood, change the dynamics. I would get myself a nice cup of tea, regroup, and then take a different tact. Okay, and there will be times when you're saying to your child, this is not a choice. You're going to do your learning first, and then you're going to watch CBeebies, but Miss Leggett is waiting to see your off page, and that's what we're going to do first. And it's easy for me to say, well, I'm at school, and I'm not doing it at home. Lots of rewards when the work's complete. They don't have to be big things. Drawing a smiley face, fantastic. Using a timer, so if you are a reluctant writer, and I remember myself having this, that knowing there's an end to it, and sometimes it does help you just grit your teeth and get it done. Snack and a drink can help. Obviously you don't want to spend all day snacking and drinking and not doing the work, but that can help. Ask for help, and then I would say prioritise. You know, if things really are tough, what is the one thing you're going to get done today in terms of learning? What is going to make you feel like it's not a complete write-off? It might be a phonics play game. Great. It might be a phonics play game and then another activity. But just prioritise. Some of the extras aren't going to happen today. We're not having a good day. We're not in the right mood. But I'm going to make sure we do the sound tin. And when I email the teacher, I'm going to say, okay, we couldn't settle, but we did do the sound tin, and she knew all of her sounds apart from okay. BBC Bite Size, CBeebies, lots of things out there if you need to watch alpha blocks or the number blocks and talk about it. Remember, talk at this age is really, really important. So talk things through, and if you're not getting everything written down, recorded on paper, we don't always get things written down on paper at school either. Sometimes it is a talk activity. And the talking and the thinking behind that talk is the real learning. And we don't need a record in the books of what they were thinking, because we were really listening in the lesson. So the talking is really, really important. Okay, so I've put these on as well. I might video myself accessing Purple Mash so you can see, and I'll add this on, but this is as a slide. So when you've logged in, we've got work and we've got to-dos. So you click on the arrow to expand the class folder. Okay, so you need to click here to get the work. I'm sure you've found that for yourselves now. And then everything is organised in dates. So you'll be able to find the work looking at what the date is and what you need to do. If you have got behind, it might be that you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to start with this week's learning and I'm going to try and get back on track with this week's learning, and it might be that you have to park the learning you've missed. If that helps you to get back on track, then try that, because we want to see some learning. And if that's been really difficult for you, if you feel like you've missed lots, that can be completely overwhelming, and your child isn't going to cope to catch up all of those weeks of learning. So you almost need to draw a line under it and say, okay, we're going to start afresh. Today is a fresh day. I'm going to find today's learning and we're going to do that. Okay. Your screen will show the learning documents and you can open these by selecting one and clicking open. And then sometimes it's a to-do. So if it's not in the work folder, it's a to-do. It's dated, you can see what it is, and you can open it and do it on there and submit it on Purple Mash. We know that for some of the activities, particularly the maths, it's hard because you're actually needing to use the mouse to write on the sheet. You don't have to write on the sheet at all. You could look at the piece of learning, read it through with your child, and then your child just writes the answers in their books or on a piece of paper, and you just take a photo of that and send it to the teacher. The teacher would be able to match those answers to the work she's set. Okay, that's the end of the PowerPoint. I hope it's been useful. We do feel for you. We do miss you. I don't know when schools will reopen, and I don't know how that will look. I'll be in contact with those details as soon as I can. In the meantime, I know you're doing your best, and it might be that you need to tell yourself, I'm doing my best, because this is a difficult time for everyone out there, and you're bound to be worried about, am I doing enough? Is my child going to be behind when they come back to school? I'm not a trained teacher. This is really difficult. Am I doing it right? I'm sure by now that your teacher will have reached out to you and said, yeah, that's great learning, well done. And just remember that it is different when you're at home. And it was always different for me when I was at home with my children. And often it was a struggle to get learning done. Despite all my experience of being in school, my children didn't see me as their teacher. And in a way that's a good thing. I'm their mum. But it was often hard, particularly with the writing at home. So I do feel for you. And I wouldn't want you to think that I'm, my house runs so smoothly that my children are begging to do writing in the morning, because that really isn't the case. So get in contact. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to have a phone call with you. I could set up a Zoom with individuals, and I think it would be individuals because every family is different. But if that helps, just ask. Send an email to the school office, and I will be in contact with you as soon as I can. Okay, so keep going. We've nearly got to half term. You're doing well. Take care. Bye.